Hello, my name is Catherine and I'm the Director within the Business of Data team here at Crinium, and it is a pleasure to have you joining us today. Driven by our global connected network, Crinium inspires data and analytics senior leaders to drive efficiency and innovation and follow proven paths to success. The Business of Data show is just one of the formats where we showcase thought-leading insights from senior data analytics executives. In each episode, we'll discuss the latest industry news and research and explore the hottest topics, challenges and opportunities from around the world. On that note, we'd love to hear from you. If you have thoughts, questions or topics that you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please do email them over to bod@criniumgroup.com. In recent years, analytics has become a critical business function in many of the world's largest enterprises. Our latest research suggests that 69% of enterprises are now using predictive analytics of AI models, and 25% have made the jump to prescriptive analytics. However, achieving analytics success is more than simply deploying analytics tools, and it's well documented that many analytics projects never succeed in driving business value. So today, we'll be looking at why so many analytics strategies deliver subpar results and what analytics leaders can do to set their strategies up for success. Our first guest joining me in the studio is Courtney Abercrombie, who's the founder of AI Truth. Courtney is passionate about empowering business leaders to understand, engage and act on artificial intelligence and is joining me from Texas today. Welcome, Courtney.
Hey, welcome to me. Yay. No. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
It's always great to be talking with you guys at Business of Data. It's a fantastic show.
Thank you so much. So let's dive in with our first question. I think what might be really useful is if we can start by defining analytics success. What does success look like for you?
To me, success is when you are an essential part of the business and you have a seat at the CEO's table, because they can't live without your strategic insights as a lever for growth. And so that, to me, when you're sitting there having those very strategic discussions and they just feel like they can't do without you, that means that you've become essential. Another way that you can be very essential to the business is providing analytics that not only informs every strategic business decision, but also could become quite the revenue generating aspect for the company. Maybe it becomes part of a key product or service of the company, something to do with personalization or some customer trends that you've been able to hone in on.
So I'm going to pick on that first point you mentioned there about having a seat at the table. How do you get that seat? What does it take to get that executive buy-in so that when you're at the table, you're being respected and listened to and really valued?
Well, you have to really go always with the understanding of the company's strategy from the get-go and the CEO's point of view down to his leaders, his direct reports, or her direct reports. And you can do this by interviewing them one-on-one, making sure that you understand how each of the CEO reports are going to interpret the strategy for their own functions impact. So if you're talking to a digital leader, you want to understand what it is that they're going to do to try to meet the company's strategic objectives. And then you want to try to find those revenue producing areas that you think apply analytics really can have analytics applied really well and go for that big win. And that's how you get taken seriously, is by doing strategic projects. I think, and you're probably going to ask this next, but I think the challenge comes in that a lot of chief analytics officers or chief data scientists will take on the role, but then they become inundated with so many small projects. And those projects then can kind of almost become a bad word because they're just little tiny, not always the most meaningful in terms of strategic impact and things that the CEO isn't necessarily going to notice, but it will make you friends, but that's not always the best strategy for getting a seat at the table.
So I want to dive deeper into that area in a moment, but actually I want to take a step backwards because you mentioned there about the business strategy, and obviously we're talking about analytics. Now, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you believe that there shouldn't be kind of separate strategies? It should be one united business strategy, or do you think there is merit in having separate strategies for whatever you're trying to achieve? So in this case, analytics.
Well, obviously you start with the business strategy. Always, from the CEO level down, you want to know exactly what is it that is going to make a strategic difference for the company. And then from there, you build an analytics strategy that will help you achieve those tasks. So that's always the approach in my mind, your strategic analytics strategy should be part of the overarching strategy for the company.
Brilliant. So you started mentioning there some of the challenges that often companies and leaders end up dealing with due to the strategic aims there. So you mentioned about taking short projects or smaller ideas. So how do you combat that? How do you work through those mistakes that you touched upon? And are there any others that you'd like to talk us through?
Well, so you'd have to first be picky. I hate to say it because you're usually trying to win friends when you first get into the role. But if you're not picky, you won't become focused on the things that will actually allow you to stake your analytic organization's reputation on. You really need to always be thinking, what am I willing to take on that I'm willing to stake my entire analytics organization's reputation on? And if it's something that's small and doesn't accomplish a ton, maybe rethink that, unless you're in the very starter stages where you need to kind of get a few small wins under your belt. And certainly that is a strategy where you go in and you try to get those champions on your side. But you do need to make sure that at least if you are doing that the champions that you choose have a strategic level project going on. And then you can tackle smaller parts within that larger strategic initiative. I think that the other thing that I see that kind of gets in the way of some of the analytics success, I guess is what we're going to call it today, is a lot of analytics leaders believe the work will speak for itself. And I'm actually going to say that's not true because the work will never get noticed unless you're like an internal politician or a salesperson. you must always be working with people. You must educate and constantly communicate. You have to help them understand how data analytics and your team can work with them to achieve these very strategic milestones. You must think of yourselves constantly as an internal consultancy. If you've ever worked with consultants, good or bad, they're always communicating, they're always anticipating the next big thing, and they're always offering up a next level, a next thing. So you want to always be in touch and setting up stakeholder calls to show off your organization's work on key strategic initiatives. You want to create cadences on a regular basis with executives to give updates on those key milestones on a regular basis. And whatever you do, just don't disappear into a dark cave somewhere for, 8 weeks and then emerge later with something that has become irrelevant, because business changes at the speed of light, especially during, the time that we've all been in this pandemic world, unfortunately. Things have changed by the minute as new information has come out, as new vaccinations have come out. So that's what I would encourage.
Absolutely. Now, Courtney, the reason I love talking to you is because you always give such actionable insights. So be picky and then brag and shout about what you're doing. Don't be shy in sharing those successes. And I think what's really interesting actually is the way that you've set up that kind of long-term strategy and then with that shorter-term goal. When you have contexts like the pandemic over the top of that, it means you can adapt to that quite quickly, in the sense of you can still have that overarching longer-term goal whilst you're dealing with the immediate demands, as you say so rightly, the pandemic 2020, 2021, as we look forward, the speed in which we need to adapt and be resilient is just absolutely lightning. So being able to do that with your strategies is so crucial. So I completely agree with what you say there. So what advice do you give to clients who ask you how to set their analytics strategies up for success? What is kind of any further advice you could give to clients?
Yeah, so in addition to what we've been talking about, I'm going to sound like a broken record. It's really just always starting with the company strategy and then working through the other reports to the CEO, and really being interlocked with the CEO and the direct reports to both understand what is on their minds and what kinds of strategies they're taking on to help the company, and then understanding exactly where you can be a part of the revenue producing areas, because that puts you in a position of leverage, so that you're not just a cost area, because as we know, especially in pandemic times, those areas tend to be more vulnerable than ones that are proven to be able to produce revenue. And that's a tall order. So I recognize that that's not something that's just easy. But the way that you can do that is, look for those areas that you can baseline and establish some KPIs, and do that. Make sure that you're doing that before you start so that you can begin showing immediate impact. The worst case scenario is that you're just exploring different things that, just for the fun of it, I hate to say. I mean, you can do that, but it's just not going to get you the same level of impact as being able to run a cadence with executives on a regular basis and say, okay, this week we achieved X, Y, Z. Next week we're going to achieve this in support of this major strategic initiative. That really gives you just such a strong presence in the company that can't be ignored. The other thing I would say is form a bond with the departments that you interlock with. So if you're working with, for example, marketing, and you're trying to create a personalized experience engine with them, make sure that you're in constant contact and communications. Make them part of your team. Consider forming a hybrid pod, so to say, of your people and their people that can add their expertise, because that just makes everything so much stronger. But then the other thing, all the diversity of perspectives adding into these analytics revenue producing products are amazing. And then you get this great experience of having this bond with another group that's also very proud of the work that you've both done. And so that gives you yet another advocate within the company that says, look at this, look what we did together. This is an amazing thing. So I would say do that. And then the second thing would be just if you're just starting out in a company, consider a procession of smaller projects. I said that, but make sure smaller projects that you can show an immediate impact, and make sure though that they're still part of the strategic umbrella that the company wants to achieve, but they're just smaller projects within the strategic umbrella. Don't just take on smaller projects just for the sake of smaller projects. And don't bite off too much.
as tempting as that can be. Courtney, I mean, my real takeaway from this conversation is to understand and then communicate your purpose constantly, whether that be strategically to the board in meetings, and just really driving down into the purpose of what you're doing. And like I say, shouting that for everyone to hear and understand. As always, it's such a pleasure to have you join us, Courtney. Thank you so much.
Thanks. It was great being here. Thanks for having me.
I'll now be handing over to Craig Stewart to continue this brilliant conversation surrounding analytics strategies for success with another superb guest. Over to you, Craig.
Thanks, Catherine. Always fascinating to hear from Courtney Abercrombie, one of our biggest supporters. Joining me here in Johannesburg to share his incredible insights into analytics strategy success is Yudhvir Sitharam, who's the head of analytics, insights and research at FNB. Yudhvir is no stranger to the studio environment, being a regular commentator on the developments of data analytics. His major focus is on using data analytics to manage and improve the customer lifecycle at the bank. Yudhvir, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me in studio. How are you doing?
Awesome. All good, all good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. So let's maybe start off our conversation around really defining what is analytics success. It can mean different things to different people. What does it mean to you?
So for me, it's trying to find that amazing balance, which is a bit easier said than done, of business collaborating with analytics and vice versa, to actually go and say you want to enhance customer experience, you want to enhance customer value, and you ultimately want to improve the profitability of that relationship for both parties involved.
Okay. And I guess one of the key things there is it's about both parties being involved. It's about the analytics team coming up with or generating or creating great models that generate great insights, and then business to actually go and use those.
Yes, exactly.
How are you finding that sort of link, that sort of crossover of actually getting the insights into action?
It varies per organization, and what I traditionally find is that so we are from the more on the commercial business side of things. A lot of your smaller businesses and the corresponding people who look after them are more comfortable to innovate and be digital in that space. As you start going into large businesses, enterprises, corporate banking, the traditional approaches require a lot more time in order to get buy-in from your executives. So it varies across the value chain.
Okay. And what are some of the common mistakes that you've seen, that you've experienced around developing a successful analytical strategy within the organization? Because I think that's where people get a little bit sort of stuck, or they love to hear that. Like, what are some of the mistakes? What should I watch out for?
Yeah, I think key for me, number one, is putting the cart before the horse. To actually say that I hear about these fancy models that are being done, therefore I need to do it exactly in order to have any success. When in reality, you need to provide incremental success. Whether it comes in the form of reporting or a simple model before you start going into machine learning and AI and those, cutting edge algorithms, it's about going incrementally to say that if you are able to increase 1% at a time, those 1% add up till the end of the day, as opposed to saying I'm committing to this fancy new model that's going to solve world peace, trying to break it up into smaller intervals. So one is definitely step by step and starting off simple before going complex. The other one is ensuring that you have the buy-in, which is a much more cultural thing. Do executives, do the remaining staff, do they understand the value of data, where it is not just a problem for them to read on, but also you as a data scientist to actually convey. So storytelling is not just telling stories with data. It has to also be the branding, the awareness, which comes from your analytical leadership to convey that culture change.
And how do you get people involved in sort of co-creation around models and insights to get them really bought in? Because I think there is the tendency to keep things sort of isolated in the analytics team, the
Yes,
data science team. We
yes.
know what we're doing. We're building
Yes.
the models, and as you talked about, things like machine learning, AI, that the rest of the business has heard of,
Yeah.
certainly don't understand, and they're
Yeah.
probably scared of it.
Yeah.
How do you get them in? How do you
Yeah.
build that bridge of
Yeah.
co-creation? Let's do this together. Let's get some results.
I see it on a micro scale, having your data science and analytics teams be as close to their business stakeholders as possible. So not talking organization and structure design, but actually being so close that they are part and parcel of their business stakeholder. So that's quite important. The second one for me is then saying, from a governance perspective, how do you involve your business stakeholders in signing off the so-called business rules? So are you comfortable as a salesperson that this particular variable means something in the life of your salesperson providing the product to your customer?
Yeah.
So bringing them in from a governance perspective, and then on a day-to-day perspective, being so entrenched that they think you are part of their team.
Yeah. And going back to the question around data analytics or analytic strategy success, let's kind of take a few steps back in the life cycle. How much time do you spend as the head of analytics, insights, and research with the people who look after data governance, data quality, data integration, data sourcing, etc.? Because the analytics doesn't work without the ingredients.
There we go.
Which is the data. So
There we
where
go.
do you kind of get involved from that point, and then obviously all the way through to the actual business side as well?
So I must say, over the years and now being prompted more by legislation, we are forced to go and understand a lot of what came before us in the value chain. So it's important to actually say, I need to start thinking of myself as a stakeholder to then provide my requirements to those data engineering, data warehousing type teams. So it's become significantly more now, which is a little bit strange because it's like you hired me to build models and now you're asking me to go and create data requirements.
Yeah.
So it's a mindset change on data scientists as well to say that we can only do our job if we have the right data, to your point. Further, we should be able to provide requirements as to what data we want and how we want it.
Yeah.
So it forces us to not only provide downstream to our stakeholders, but also to think in a stakeholder mindset to then say, do I really know what can I articulate from engineers, etc., that I need for my job to be successful.
All right. And one of the key things that I think we should talk about is in the South African context, we're now less than 100 days away from POPIA compliance. As someone who works in analytics and is obviously trying to get data on customers and third-party data and all that sort of thing, how is that affecting how you're sort of achieving success and insights from the analytics models?
So it most certainly has an impact on our world. And number one, it forces us to understand the legislation as well. Number two, it forces us to be much more customer-oriented and customer-centric. So for organizations that have been purely focusing on numbers as opposed to customers, that's a mindset change. For those that are already down the journey to say, I understand what the customer wants, I'm trying to go there, the POPI Act coming into play is, in the very simplest of words, a filter to then say that instead of me having a sample of 100, I have a sample of 100 minus. So it's minimal changes for those who already have gone down the journey. What it forces everyone to think about is you have to be extremely data orientated. There's no more spamming. There's no more spraying and praying that customers are going to take up your product. You have to be very targeted, very intentional on who you want to offer your solutions to. So it forces us to be closer to business, which is a great thing. It also forces us to be able to understand the real customer need that we're trying to solve for, as opposed to just give me data, give me models, and I'll work from home.
And on that point, has it helped or hindered this drive towards hyper-personalization?
I think it's helped. So it forces us to be more in understanding and gathering of information that says, here's your characteristics, here's what you prefer, what you don't prefer. Let us go and honor that agreement that you've mentioned or given us. So it forces us to be, if I can say, intuitively more personalized. The opposite side of that very same coin is that if less customers give us consent, then we can't really do anything. So you are given this amazing thing called trust. Don't mess it up, because if you do mess it up, the consequences are not just legal, but now it's a consequence of you work yourself out of a job because you're not going to have enough data to build your models on. So it forces us to be very, very intentional on what we want to do and how we want to execute it.
Right. Last question before we close off the episode. For the people that are watching that are maybe just starting their analytics journey within their organization, what are some of the tips that you can give them that they should look look out for in the first 100 days of that transformation?
Wow. So I guess especially now with working from home, the first 100 days or whatever, small number of days rather, has to be on understanding the culture of where you're going. If you're moving companies, if you're starting off in a new company, new team, etc., understand how people work. Because as much as we are virtual, as much as we can be more productive, less productive, depending on circumstances, understanding your culture is extremely important. It's not just about productivity, it's about getting to know the people that you work with. So number one, your own team. Number two, that same logic with your broader stakeholder team. Brainstorming over virtual platforms is not as easy, and it takes a little bit more adjusting to get used to. So if you are a visual person and I prefer thinking before I speak, then a team platform that's done virtually is not going to help us. We need to be in a brainstorming session, like physically in a room, talking about these type of ideas. So knowing how your stakeholders like to work, and then afterwards you get into the typical things like creating a strategy, delivering on the incremental wins that we talked about earlier, and thereafter just building on those successes.
Perfect. Divya, thank you so much for joining me in studio. It's been
Awesome.
great to chat to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, that's it from South Africa today. Now it's time for me to hand over to Kate Tappan in our Sydney studio. Kate, over to you.
Thanks, Craig. Delighted to be here and to welcome our next guest speaker. Angela Kim, who is the Head of Analytics and AI at Teachers Health and Women in AI Education Ambassador and Global Head. Angela is an AI professional specialised in ethics, explainability, diversity and inclusion in AI, and recipient of Top 5 Analytics Leaders 2020 from the Institute of Analytics Professionals Australia, and also sits on the founding editorial board of Springer's new and timely AI and Ethics Journal. Thank you for joining us, Angela.
Hi, Kate. Thank you so much for having me today. It's such a pleasure to be here to share about my data analytics journey with you.
Fantastic to have you with us. Thank you so much. I will dive into our first question. Angela, people talk of analytics success. What does that mean to you, and what should we be aspiring to?
That's really practical, good question, because a lot of business organizations, they do realize, analytics is a key to really drive a successful business and really, provide, happy customer experience. The problem is there's a lot of buzzwords going around. People think analytics is some kind of magic wand, which is not true, because it is
silver bullet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it is kind of magic wand in a sense that it can do what human cannot do, because the data and the tools enables really organization to use the data to achieve a lot of predictive attributes to use for the customer service and business profit, right?
That's right.
But customer success through data analytics project really depending on how you define the problems properly.
Yeah.
So to understand what's the business challenge, and make sure that you bring all the different teams within the organization, so that it's not just one team siloed to understand, to try to solve the problem by itself. It's really truly collaborative effort to bring really senior leaders top down, and there was middle managers and analysts from bottom up, and try to really understand what is the business problems and challenges the organization is facing at the moment, and how the data existing can help to drive it.
Yeah.
Because the data is, we call it, hidden nuggets. Because, if you can really, mine the data, and that's why it's called the data mining, right? Mine the data properly and align to the business problems and objectives, then you have more opportunity to solve the problem in a correct way. So that that's why really analytics success depends on how you understand your business problem and how you align that with your data and tools, and lastly, most importantly, the talent pool. So what capabilities do you have internally, and understanding where the gap is. So identifying how to fill the gap, whether we want to bring externally, we want to really grow internally. do we have a longer, time frame to achieve the, the goals, or do we have a short time frame? Depending on the scenario where your ecosystem resides in, really dictates, what approach you need to take. So never think about, the success story done around you is the case for you. You have to understand it's really highly the personalized the approach you should take, because depending on your organization, you can really define the problem and where you want to go.
Take it off the shelf.
Exactly.
And roll it out.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the key,
Yeah.
right? So I think as long as you have a great strategy and the plan in place in terms of acknowledging that, where you are and ready to take the journey together, I think that's really the key, success, to deliver the success in the near future.
Brilliant. Thank you. Now, I've got another interesting question for you. We've seen a dramatically accelerated rate of digital transformation in the last 12 to 18 months. What's a key word for you right now?
Kate, that's really tricky question, because there are so many keywords, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because as you rightly said, we've gone through amazing digital transformation in such a short time. So, it's hard to say, thanks to pandemic, but, actually pandemic contributed really all the organizations, even, the customers, even community citizens, right, move into data-driven approach. So a lot of senior citizens understand what, flatten the cover means. And they've been faced with these charts almost every day. And they understand data-driven app, tracking, corona tracking devices. So really taken the next level of digital, fluency and literacy, right, so to speak, right? Absolutely. So imagine the people at workforce, going through huge changes, almost forced to adapt new digital way of working, collaboration, and it's been a huge jump in terms of moving forward and accelerating into really the next phase of digital phase, right? So we've achieved a lot, and we are, I think, good to really understand now what's next.
Yeah.
Because we've gone through huge changes. So
Which we needed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's almost like, it's like a child growing very rapidly within like 12 to 18 months. Of course, there's a bit of side effect, because you've grown rapidly in a short span of time, which is not natural. So you would expect there will be changes. There will be nuances. You need to really pay attention to that, because of course, you can aspire, okay, this is opportunity, let's jump, even faster. But you have to remember, you have to pace it, because now is the time you can really take the advantage of your digital transformation, which means you need to assess, okay, we've, acknowledging that we've achieved so much, never precedented before. But which means we need to check, are we all okay about this? Yeah. Are there any teams really struggling? Are there any teams can you really need a bit of support? So this is again linking back to diversity and inclusion.
Absolutely.
Yes, because the work I do with the Women in AI, we really promote zero exclusion. That's our goal this year, 2021. Zero
goal.
Exclusion.
I mean, yeah.
Not just gender, racial, everything, cultural background, and disability, ability, capability. You need to really consider the team to be really truly inclusive, to understand, because at the end of the day, the humans are the make or break. People think, we can automate a lot of things. We can downsize the team from 10 to 5. But at the end of the day, it has to be human in the loop. You can't exclude the human factor, because AI can do a lot of smart things. But the cognitive component of a human being is crucial to understand how can we use AI really smartly.
Absolutely. It's that balance and that.
Exactly.
How they work together.
Yeah,
how you weave those two elements.
Yes. Yeah. So we call it machine and human collaboration. So that's the kind of next keyword. Yeah. Because we've come through amazing digitization, journey, and now we have to think about: are we really taking the advantage most out of the human and machine collaboration? Yeah. Are we overlooking the human factor? Are we overlooking the machine factor? Because we have to really understand truly where we are and what do we want to achieve in our next phase of whether it's work or whether it's life, as like employees, right?
Yeah.
And again, the HR plays a really important role because it's more than just the employee management. It's all it's broadened, and we need to involve HR more closely. And really, support, data-driven and, technology-driven approach because a lot of tools are there, already. So I think human and machine collaboration is a kind of next keyword. And the organization who can really strike it really right in a very nimble, fast way can really have the, upper hand in terms of achieving better outcome because many organizations focusing on the machine fact, threats, right? So only really, what can we do more tools and more machines, more data, right? But the most important thing is we need to consider the human factor and how can we really, support and embedding
a holistic view
exactly
of analytics
Yes.
success.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
I call it human-centered analytics.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. We've got time for just one more question. What's next? What excites you most about the future opportunities in data analytics?
That's one of my favorite questions because as you can see that I'm really passionate about how technology can help people, right?
Yeah.
So the next phase is we lightly touched on about diversity and inclusion, right, Kate? Diversity and inclusion is very, very important, and luckily through AI it really surfaced the importance of it.
Yeah.
Because to build a really great machine learning model, diversity and inclusion is very important because you can see from the driverless car, the mishap and facial recognition, all these mishaps. It's all caused by because we never took interest or pay attention about how the humans, different diverse and inclusive data sets that to begin with can cause unexpected consequences. We never anticipated because the team who created this machine learning model, we were not truly diverse and inclusive at all. And we assumed it was okay. Yeah, so it was okay at the time, but we've learned the mistake. And if you repeat the same mistake, then you're a fool.
Absolutely.
You need to be wise.
Yeah.
So the good news is globally, I can hear a lot of conversation happening and people really acknowledging the crucial importance of diversity and inclusion in the machine learning and data analytics because AI is a tool.
Yeah.
But as long as it is good in terms of data, the feed-in to create the model is not biased, then the model is not biased. Because the team who's creating and working from the end to end, so we call it ethics by design, right? So are diverse, then the outcome will be very inclusive and diverse and inclusive, right? So that's really creates most positive optimal outcome that we can really serve the community and citizens with a product and service. And that's the end goal. Yeah. That's how you should use AI. AI is not for technology. AI is not for technologists. It's for the people who's going to take the benefit. For example, I've been hearing the technology giants, creating this particular AI-driven the software to help autistic the children. Yeah. So that's the goal we want to achieve because AI for good. If we can provide the best childhood, they don't have to go through the difficulties because AI can help it.
Yeah.
And the people who's the color-blinded people, if AI can help to really assist the children go through the normal childhood.
Incredible applications.
That is incredible. That is how we vision the AI and AI professional. As an AI professional myself, I'd love to see the future where the AI can really help more minority people and more people who's less fortunate in a less privileged area. Cool. And that's where we should go. And looking forward to the seeing the more future. Yeah. AI can really support
that's great.
The creative outcome.
I'm sorry, we have to stop there. But,
sorry.
Angela, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing the good news. Clearly, we're getting momentum behind the right initiatives and that the way of thinking with the holistic view around success that you've shared with us today. We really appreciate that. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kate. It's been such a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I'll hand back to you, Catherine, in our UK studio to wrap up this episode. Thank you for joining us, and back to you, Catherine.
Brilliant, there we go. What an excellent episode. Thank you again to our thought leaders for their wonderful contributions. Next time we'll be talking all about the cloud, just as we have done this time. We'll be joined by expert thought leaders to help us deep dive into the challenges and opportunities. Be sure to subscribe to the Business of Data YouTube channel, follow our page on LinkedIn and visit our content platform for more great content, insight and connections. Stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you next time.